They say history forgets what it can't explain. But in 1857, in the quiet town of Millfield, Illinois, a young girl began weeping tears of blood every hour, witnessed by priests, doctors, and her terrified neighbors. This really happened, and for decades the church kept her story buried deep beneath its oldest records. March 3, 1857, Millfield, Illinois. The census listed Millfield as a small parish town tucked between Springfield and a stretch of farmland now long gone. Its church, St. Augustine's Parish, was the heart of everything: weddings, funerals, and every whispered secret that mattered. That winter, people started talking about Clara Henson, a 12-year-old girl who lived with her mother in a small wooden boarding house behind the churchyard. Her father had died of fever the previous year, leaving the two of them barely scraping by. Locals remembered her as quiet, polite, always clutching a small hymnal wherever she went. But in early March, strange things began to happen. At first it was small, drops of crimson appearing on her pillow in the mornings. Her mother, Margaret Henson, thought it was a nosebleed, but when Clara began crying, her tears left red trails down her cheeks. Dr. Peter Harlan, the town physician, was called in. His handwritten notes, found later in the Illinois State Archives, dated March 5th, describe hemolacria, a rare medical condition. But even he wrote something unusual in the margins. The child's pulse is steady, her mind clear. Yet there's fear in her eyes, as if she knows when the next bleeding will come. The townsfolk didn't see it as a medical problem. They saw it as a curse. By the second week, word had spread. The priest of St. Augustine's, Father Bernard Lang, performed the sign of the cross over the child and sprinkled holy water. Witnesses say she screamed, not from pain, but as if the sound came from somewhere else in the room. The parish ledger from March 12, 1857, confirms a meeting of the clergy. One line in smudged ink reads, "The girl's affliction may not be of this world." That same night, the bell tower rang at 3:17 a.m., without wind, without anyone inside the church. Margaret Henson's neighbor, a woman named Ellen Ford, recalled in her later testimony, taken in 1899 and preserved in the Millfield Historical Society papers. "I heard her sobbing through the wall. Not just crying, sobbing like a prayer she couldn't finish. Then silence. Then something knocking from under the floorboards. The next morning, Ellen saw blood streaks on Clara's bedroom window. On the outside, Father Lang ordered the window boarded up and forbade anyone from visiting after dusk. For the safety of the child, he said, but whispers spread fast in small towns. Children claimed they saw red footprints in the churchyard snow. Someone found a torn page from Clara's hymnal near the confessional booth. Its words underlined in shaky pencil, "Deliver us from the evil that dwells among us." March 18, 1857, 9:24 p.m. A storm hit Millfield. The church's single oil lamp flickered through the stained glass as thunder shook the ground. Margaret said she awoke to Clara standing at the foot of her bed, eyes open but not awake. "Mama," the girl whispered, "it's not inside me anymore." When Margaret lit her candle, the flame went out, and through the darkness she swore she heard a low hum, like a hymn sung backward. 2 days later, the parish records abruptly stopped mentioning the Hensons. No service logs, no confessions, not even attendance. What happened next would only resurface more than a century later, when archivists digitizing old church papers found an unmarked cassette tape labeled Millfield Testimony, 1857, translated reading, 1979. The voice on the tape, believed to be a priest reading the original Latin manuscript, says something chilling. She cried blood every hour, until the day she smiled through it. March 23, 1857, 7:26 p.m. The last confirmed sighting of Clara alive came from a man named George Whitby, the church's caretaker. He told a traveler years later that he saw Clara kneeling before the altar as Father Lang prayed behind her. Lightning struck nearby, cutting power to the gas lamps. When the lights came back, she was gone. Whitby claimed only one thing remained where she had been kneeling: her small hymnal, still open. But every word inside had turned completely red. That hymnal still exists. It's kept in the private archive of the Diocese of Springfield. Photographs taken in 1987 show red-stained pages, chemically tested to be human blood, but no record of Clara's burial or her disappearance was ever filed. and some claim that if you visit the ruins of St. Augustine's parish today, the ground near the altar still bleeds when it rains. In 1996, during restoration work on the old church site, a construction worker unearthed a small wooden box under the altar stone. Inside were brittle pages wrapped in cloth, and a lock of hair still dark red. The next day, the worker didn't show up again. His wife said he woke screaming that night, saying a child's voice whispered from the corner of their room, "It's not inside me anymore." The church has always kept its darkest stories behind locked doors. But in 1857, when a small-town priest reported a child crying tears of blood, that secrecy became a weapon. This is the part of the story they never meant anyone to find. March 25, 1857. Millfield, Illinois. 2 days after Clara Henson vanished, Father Bernard Lang sent a telegram to the Diocese of Springfield, describing unholy disturbances within St. Augustine's parish. The reply came swiftly. Contain the matter. Silence is mercy. From that point on, all official records about Clara's case stopped, but fragments survived. Handwritten confessions, medical notes, and one unsigned letter found decades later in a dusty storage unit behind the parish rectory. The letter was typed on an early Remington typewriter, ink smudged with something darker than time. The girl was taken below the altar. It reads, "We sealed her suffering in holy ground. May God forgive what we did." Witness statements from the town's few literate citizens tell of strange occurrences following Clara's disappearance. On March 30th, Ellen Ford, the same neighbor from Part 1, told her husband she heard organ music drifting through the empty church at dawn. When she went to the chapel window, she swore she saw a child's reflection staring back from the inside. By April, no one in Millfield attended Mass. Father Lang locked the church doors at sunset and was rarely seen without a lantern and a small Bible pressed against his chest. April 14th, 1857. 10:46 p.m. A local farmhand, named Thomas Beale, was walking home from the Millfield diner, one of the few places still open that spring. He later told a reporter in 1902 that he stopped when he heard footsteps behind him. "I turned around and saw a small figure near the church gates. Thought it was a child lost in the dark," he said. "But when my flashlight hit her face, her eyes were shut. Yet she was crying, red streaks down her cheeks." Beale dropped his Marlboro cigarette, ran, and didn't stop until he reached the next town. He never went back. Inside the parish house, Father Lang began keeping a logbook of strange events. Portions of that log were discovered during church renovations in the 1970s. Preserved on an audio cassette tape labeled Millfield Archives 26, the voice of the reader trembles as it quotes the priest's handwriting. April 21st. Blood on the altar again, puddled like rainwater. The candlelight flickers when I speak her name. I have stopped praying out loud. April 25. I found her hymnal returned to the pew. I burned it. The ashes bled. The cassette clicks, then resumes. April 28th. I hear her in the coat closet, humming the same verse over and over. "Deliver us! Deliver us!" By May, Father Lang's health deteriorated. Parish reports mention fainting spells, fever, and unexplained nosebleeds. He was advised to rest, but witnesses say he refused to leave the church, claiming she's still here. When his assistant, Brother Callahan, entered the rectory kitchen one morning, he found the priest's diner coffee mug shattered on the floor, its inside smeared with blood. Though Lang himself was uninjured, pinned to the wall with a door chain was a page from Clara's hymnal. Across it, in red pencil, someone had written, "She's awake beneath the altar, June 2nd, 1857, 3:12 a.m. The storm that night is well documented in regional weather records. Lightning struck the parish steeple. A caretaker from the neighboring township arrived at dawn and found the main door unlocked. Inside, the pews were overturned. The crucifix was missing, and Father Lang was gone. All that remained was his Bible, open to Revelation 6:12, and the whole moon became blood. Nearly a century later, in 1959, restoration workers cleaning the basement laundry room of the rebuilt parish discovered a metal storage unit. Inside were two water-damaged objects, a cassette tape dated Sept 17, 1959, a typewritten transcript labeled Witness Interview, Ellen Ford's granddaughter, Alice. The transcript records Alice's voice trembling. "I was 6 when my grandmother took me to church. I remember hearing a girl singing from the floor. Grandma told me, 'Don't look down.' but I did. And I saw eyes open in the stone. Audio technicians from the Illinois Historical Society restored that same cassette in 1981, the last 15 seconds. Contained what experts described as a child's voice reciting a prayer backward, overlapping a heartbeat. When slowed down, the voice says, "It's not inside me anymore. It's under you." In 1996, after the discovery of the wooden box beneath the altar, one historian, Dr. Walter Gaines, a professor of American religious folklore, requested access to the diocese's sealed archive. He was granted permission on June 12, 1996. According to his wife, he returned home that evening pale and trembling. He told her they never buried her. The next morning, he was found unconscious near his study desk. The only note left beside his flashlight read, "Check the walls." She's still crying. Every old church holds secrets. But when restoration workers broke into the sealed foundation of St. Augustine's in 1997, they didn't find relics. They found something still alive. This really happened, and official reports only tell half of what was uncovered. April 11, 1997, Millfield, Illinois. After years of abandonment, the parish ruins of St. Augustine's Church were being restored by the Illinois Preservation Trust. The plan was to convert the property into a historical museum. Foreman David Langford, 42, kept a small notebook for work records. His entry that Friday reads, "Unearthed southern wall section. Found traces of iron and organic residue, possibly old blood. Crew shaken. Requested environmental testing." But according to his co-worker Eli Morales, the stains weren't random. They ran down in streaks, Eli said later in an interview, like something had bled from the inside out. Over the following week, construction slowed. Tools went missing. The door chain on the supply closet rattled at night, even when locked. A cassette tape recorder left running overnight picked up faint knocking at intervals of exactly 60 minutes apart, matching the timing once described in the 1857 logs, April 17, 1997. 2:03 a.m. Security footage, recorded on VHS, captured the moment a single flashlight beam flickered across the west wall. Then the feed cut to static for 11 seconds. When playback resumed, a new message was visible on the plaster. "I am still here." The handwriting matched a letter found in Father Lang's 1857 records. Investigators from the Diocese Historical Committee arrived 3 days later. Among them was Dr. Walter Gaines, the same professor who'd collapsed the previous year after viewing the secret archive. He had insisted on returning, bringing a Polaroid camera to document everything personally. In an interview years later, a preservation volunteer named Lydia Crane recalled his demeanor. He was calm, methodical. But when he saw the markings on the wall, his face drained. He said, "It's identical to the altar stones." That evening, Gaines took 6 Polaroid photos. In the 5th one, experts later noticed a small shadow near the floor, about the size of a child, bent over. The original print still hangs in the Springfield Historical Society. Stamped, "Unverified Phenomenon, April 22, 1997, 10:15 p.m. Restoration worker Robert Keller entered the basement laundry area to inspect new wiring. His wife said he phoned her from the church payphone minutes later, whispering, "Something's moving behind the bricks." When his flashlight died, he used the lighter from his Lucky Strike cigarette pack to see. His last words on the line were recorded by the switchboard. "There's an eye in the wall. He never came home." Police found his lighter and a torn coat pocket near a pile of loosened stones. Inside one crack, red liquid continued to seep for hours. Chemical analysis couldn't identify the source. It wasn't animal, and it wasn't paint. The investigation halted immediately. The church was resealed under the diocese's directive, pending sanctification procedures. But Gaines refused to leave. He contacted the Springfield Chronicle, offering his research under the pseudonym W. Alton. His submitted report included typed excerpts from Father Lang's final confessions, retrieved from the typewriter copies found in the rectory. "We buried her to keep her safe, but the ground refused her. The walls drank what the earth would not take." 2 weeks later, the Chronicle office received a small manila envelope with no return address. Inside were 2 Polaroids and a note written in pencil. "Look at the right corner." Under magnification, the first photo showed faint cracks in the wall shaped like hands pressing outward. In the second, one of those impressions had moved slightly. That same night, the office janitor reported hearing a child humming from the records room. The building's motion sensors activated. 3 times between 3 and 4 a.m. No one was inside. June 7th, 1997. 8:42 p.m. Millfields. Local broadcast news ran a 30-second segment titled, "Historic Parish Restoration." Suspended. The footage shows workers boarding up windows while police stand guard. Behind them, one window's condensation forms the clear outline of a child's face. Audio from the same clip reveals a faint phrase picked up by the microphone. Analysts later enhanced it. "It's under you." The same words from the 1959 cassette. By midsummer, Gaines withdrew from public view. His colleagues at the university said he'd become obsessed with reconstructing the parish's floor plan. On his desk, they found a blueprint sketch with markings labeled sub-level chamber, an area that never appeared in the original architectural plans. Beneath it, a sticky note: "If you find the door, don't open it until dawn." When State Archives digitized his personal notes in 2005, they found a final entry typed but never printed. Clara was never the curse. The curse was what answered her. The file ends there. In 2007, urban explorers illegally entered the ruins. They filmed with a handheld camcorder. The video, never released publicly, was reviewed by law enforcement. According to the police summary, at the 11-minute mark, the camera pans across the inner wall. Blood begins to trickle down. Then a small girl's voice says, "Mama, it's not inside me anymore." The video cuts to black. 3 of the 4 explorers left the site unharmed. The 4th was never found. They say evil fades when the walls come down. But when the church restoration crew broke through the foundation in 2007, they didn't release the past, they woke it up. This really happened, and every record that followed was classified within a week. June 9, 2007, Millfield, Illinois. It started as a weekend dare. 4 local explorers, Ryan Keller, Emma Lewis, Travis Holt, and Maria Dean, entered the sealed ruins of St. Augustine's Parish carrying only a flashlight, a cassette recorder, and an old Polaroid camera. Their goal was simple: film proof that the church wasn't haunted. Ryan, the group's self-proclaimed skeptic, began narrating for the camcorder. "This is St. Augustine's, the cursed church of Millfield. We're going under." That recording, later analyzed by police, shows the group forcing open the rusted side door. Inside, the air was damp, thick with mold and something metallic. A hymn echoed faintly, though no organ remained. The explorers descended the narrow stone stairs beneath the altar. The walls were marked with decades of soot and moisture. Emma pointed her flashlight at a small coat closet near the base of the stairs. Hanging from one hook was an antique priest's robe, still embroidered with gold trim. She whispered, "Why does it smell like iron?" Travis opened the closet door further and froze. Behind the fabric, they found a bricked archway. Ryan recorded the timestamp, June 9, 2007, 11:22 p.m. They began chipping at the wall using metal rods from the scaffolding. Within minutes, the bricks gave way, revealing a narrow opening large enough for one person to crawl through. Maria aimed the flashlight through the gap. What she saw made her drop it. There was a wooden door buried in dirt, covered in Latin script burned into the surface. The only word legible was clausa, Latin for sealed. The group set the cassette recorder on the ground to capture ambient sound while they debated entering. At the 12-minute mark on the recovered tape, an unidentified whisper says, "Don't open it until dawn." None of them had spoken those words. Ignoring the voice, Ryan forced the latch. The wooden door opened with a hollow snap. Inside was a chamber no larger than a bedroom, lined with old typewriter pages, hymn fragments, and rusted crosses nailed into the walls. At the center sat a small coffin-sized box, chained shut. The chain was engraved with a date, March 23, 1857. Ryan. Don't touch that. Relax. It's just wood," he replies, using his flashlight to pry the lid open. As the chain broke, the cassette recorder caught a rising hum, almost like a chorus. The Polaroid camera went off by itself, taking one photo before the flash died. In that single frame, developed later by police, a faint shape can be seen behind the box. Small, human-like, eyes closed. Seconds later, the camcorder shakes violently. Emma screams, "It's bleeding!" The footage turns red, streaks of liquid dripping from the ceiling. The Bible lying beside the box opens on its own, pages flipping wildly until it stops at Luke 8:30. And Jesus asked him, "What is thy name?" And he said, "Legion." Police recovered only 28 minutes of usable footage. At 11:59 p.m., the camera tilts toward Ryan's face. His eyes roll upward and blood begins running from the corners. He stammers, "She's not gone. She's never gone." The feed cuts to black. When authorities arrived 2 days later, only Emma Lewis was found outside the church, sitting near the highway. Her clothes were soaked, her hands trembling. She repeated one phrase over and over. It came out through him. June 12, 2007, 8:40 a.m. State investigators sealed the site again under order of the Diocese of Springfield. In their official summary, they described a subterranean anomaly and highly dangerous air conditions. But leaked photos show what they really found: handprints burned into the stone walls and streaks of red fluid leading up the stairs. One investigator, Detective Harold Sloan, later admitted to a journalist that he heard something that day. "It was crying," he said, like a little girl saying she wanted to go home. 2 months later, Sloan quit the force. His partner found him sitting in his basement laundry, holding an old cassette tape. The tape was blank, but when played in reverse, a child's voice could be faintly heard whispering, "You open the door. Now it's yours." The diocese quietly exorcised the site in 2009, filling the chamber with concrete. But since then, at least 6 incidents have been reported by travelers on Highway 36, the road running past the old parish grounds. Each claimed to see a child in a white dress standing in the church's shadow, crying blood. Police dismissed the sightings as folklore. Yet the last report, filed in 2021, included dashcam footage showing red smears on the asphalt, exactly where the church's foundation once stood. The final seconds of the explorers' recovered cassette tape, cleaned by the Illinois Historical Society, end with faint breathing, followed by a child's voice asking one last question. "Mama, why did they bury me awake?" July 2007, 2 weeks after the incident. Emma Lewis, the only survivor of the Millfield church exploration, was admitted to St. Mary's Psychiatric Hospital in Peoria. She hadn't spoken since that night. Not until Father Daniel Mercer, a priest from the diocese, visited her room. He asked softly, "Emma, what did you see?" Her response was calm, almost rehearsed. She wasn't cursed. She was sacrificed. That statement reopened an investigation that had been buried for nearly 150 years. The church archives reveal the truth. Father Mercer obtained access to a sealed Vatican letter dated March 24, 1857, the day after the blood phenomenon began. The letter was titled, "Concerning the child Clara Devereux, property of St. Augustine Parish." It revealed something chilling. The church had declared Clara not possessed, but chosen. She was born with a rare disorder that caused her body to produce tears mixed with blood, a condition the townspeople viewed as divine punishment. When her symptoms worsened, the church turned her into a living relic. Every hour she bled from her eyes, and they believed each drop was holy. Parish records showed that pilgrims came from across Illinois to witness her miracle. But one entry stood out, written by Father Matthew Renard, the parish leader in 1857. The girl's cries summon unclean spirits. Blood seeps from the altar each dawn. I fear the curse was never hers but ours. Further in the letter, it described how, on March 23, 1857, during a midnight ritual meant to cleanse her of demons, Clara's blood began to pour uncontrollably from her eyes, ears, and mouth. Witnesses claimed the church lights dimmed, candles snuffed out, and her final words echoed across the chamber. "You called this faith. I call it murder." She died at exactly 3 a.m. That same hour, the ground beneath the altar cracked open, and according to records, a sound of weeping children filled the chapel. Panicked, the priest sealed her body in the small underground chamber, branding it with the word Clausa, sealed forever. In 2008, Father Mercer returned to Millfield with historian Dr. Andrea Hall to document the site before reconstruction began. They brought specialized sonar to map the underground structure. What they found left experts speechless. Beneath the concrete lay not one coffin, but 3, arranged in a circle. Each bore initials carved into wood, CDMRE. LCD was clearly Clara Devereux. MR matched Father Matthew Renard, the priest who led the ritual. But E.L.? Dr. Hall recognized those initials instantly. Emma Lewis, she whispered. When Father Mercer replayed the church's recovered cassette tape, a new section appeared, audio that hadn't existed before. At the 1403 mark, a female voice spoke directly into the recorder. He buried me alive. She saw. You saw. The waveform analysis revealed something impossible. The voice contained overlapping frequencies of two different people, one belonging to a child, the other to an adult woman. That same night, Emma Lewis, still in the hospital, was found standing in her room, eyes bleeding. On the wall, she had written one sentence in blood. She said my name. She died 2 hours later of massive internal bleeding. Authorities later discovered that Emma Lewis was a direct descendant of Margaret Devereux, Clara's mother. In other words, the girl who cried blood every hour had returned through her own bloodline. Father Mercer wrote his final journal entry before resigning from the church. The curse was not a punishment. It was an inheritance. The church called it a miracle because they feared the truth, that guilt can be reborn. In 2012, during the final demolition of St. Augustine's parish, workers found one last cassette tape buried near the altar foundation. The tape was labeled in faded ink, for Mother. When archivists restored the sound, it contained 6 minutes of static, followed by a faint child's voice humming a hymn. Then she whispered, I stopped crying now. You can sleep. At the end, a woman's voice, older, shakier, replied, Thank you, Clara. That night, lightning struck the empty lot where the church once stood, setting the nearby grass ablaze. Locals claimed to hear the sound of a girl singing through the smoke, the same tune from the tape, and when firefighters arrived, they found something half buried in the ash. A small wooden cross, engraved with the initials CD, warm to the touch, and beneath it a single red tear still wet. Some stories don't fade with time, they wait, bleeding through generations. This one began in 1857 and ended 150 years later, when a grave opened itself in the heart of Illinois. June 12, 2015, Millfield, Illinois. The land where St. Augustine's parish once stood had long been redeveloped. What used to be holy ground was now a quiet suburban street, lined with freshly painted houses, plastic mailboxes, and trimmed lawns. At number 42 lived Mara Lewis, age 32, a teacher, soft-spoken, engaged to a local contractor named David Reeves. No one on the block knew about the church that had burned there in 2012. No one knew Mara's middle name, Clara. When David began renovating their basement that summer, he discovered an old layer of brick beneath the concrete, dark, hand-fired and still damp with trapped moisture. Curious, he pried one loose and found a wooden box, small as a jewelry chest, covered in soot. Inside was a cracked Polaroid photograph, undeveloped but clearly old. Beneath it lay a strip of yellowed paper written in Latin, Sanguis Mane. Nomen mane, the blood remains. The name remains. That night, the lights in the basement flickered 3 times before going out completely. Documented phenomena. June 13, 2015. According to police and hospital records, what followed over the next week was meticulously logged. June 13, 9:02 p.m. Mara called David in panic after seeing a girl standing in the laundry room. Mirror, June 14, 2:16 m. Neighbors reported hearing a hymn sung faintly from the basement. June 15th. The photo from the wooden box slowly began to develop on its own. By evening, it showed a young girl sitting in front of the altar of the old church. Bloodstains marked her cheeks. June 17th, Mara's doctor noted stress-related nosebleeds that appeared hourly. By June 20th, she was convinced the girl in the photo was herself. Father Mercer's return. After hearing of the case, Father Daniel Mercer, now retired, traveled to Millfield to visit Mara. He carried with him a worn Bible and the last remaining cassette tape from 2012. When Mara opened the door, she froze. He looked exactly like the man from her dreams, the one who stood behind the girl in the Polaroid. Mother, I've seen her, she whispered. She's asking to be freed. Mercer's hands trembled. Freed from what? From faith, she said softly. You called her cursed. She just wanted peace. That night, Father Mercer recorded his final testimony on tape. a confession that he later mailed to the Diocese of Chicago. Timestamp June 24, 2015. 11:57 p.m. This is Father Daniel Mercer, former priest of St. Augustine Parish. The curse is not demonic. It's genetic, a bloodline born from guilt and ritual. Clara Devereux was not a miracle. She was a child used to cleanse the sins of priests. They bled her to feed their faith. Every girl in her line suffers the same, until her blood stops flowing, or the church confesses. I believe Mara is the last. I can hear her now downstairs. Singing, June 22, 2015, the blood hour. Emergency dispatch records show that at 3 a.m., Mara's neighbors called 911 after hearing screams and glass breaking. Police arrived to find the front door wide open, lights flickering. Downstairs in the basement stood Mara, barefoot, eyes bleeding. On the wall behind her, written in crimson streaks, were the same Latin words from the old box, Sanguis Mane, Nomen Manet. She turned toward the officers and said calmly, "She's almost free." Then she collapsed. Autopsy. Results recorded no external wounds, but internal hemorrhaging consistent with rapid capillary rupture. The same unexplained condition documented in 1857 and 2007. The house was condemned due to structural instability, though photographs later leaked online showed handprints pressed into the concrete, child-sized, embedded deep as though molten. Father Mercer's disappearance. When police attempted to question Father Mercer, they found his car abandoned near the edge of Route 74. Driver's door open, keys still inside, Bible on the seat. Inside the glove compartment was the Polaroid photo, now fully developed. It showed the same altar scene again, but this time, Mara stood behind the girl, hand on her shoulder. Across the bottom margin, fresh ink spelled, "Mercy granted, debt paid." Mercer was never found. The land that wouldn't settle developers. Tried 3 times to rebuild on the property, but construction halted after repeated accidents. A collapsed trench, spontaneous fires, and reports of machinery starting by itself. Locals began calling the lot the ground that breathes. The final demolition crew in 2017 discovered an object buried deep in the soil. A small cassette tape recorder, still intact despite years underground. When restored, it played the faint sound of 2 heartbeats overlapping, and a girl whispering, "She's sleeping now. Don't wake her." The Millfield Curse, 2018. A team of historians and paranormal researchers produced a short documentary series for public television, which was pulled after one airing due to disturbing viewer reactions. The footage included real historical documents. St. Augustine Parish Ledger, 1856-1857. Vatican Letter, Clausa Est, 1857. Police Transcript, Millfield Incident, 2015. All confirmed that each woman who experienced the bleeding eyes shared the Devereux bloodline. Dr. Andrea Hall's interview, recorded 2019. Dr. Hall, the historian who assisted Mercer years earlier, described her final visit to the site. "It was dusk. I walked to where the altar once stood. I swear I saw a reflection, not of myself, but a young girl watching me from inside the ground. Her mouth didn't move, but I heard her voice in my head. She said, 'You wrote about me. That means I exist again.' I dropped my flashlight. When I looked down, there were 2 sets of footprints, mine and hers." After the interview, Dr. Hall resigned from the Historical Society and has not spoken publicly since. Recent genealogical data revealed that Clara Devereux's lineage stretches beyond Illinois. Descendants were found in Canada, the UK, and Australia. In April 2023, a viral video surfaced online. A woman from Toronto named Lydia Carter appeared in a live stream, visibly distressed, nose bleeding, whispering, "My grandmother said never to say our old name, never to say Devereux." The video was deleted within minutes, but mirrors of it spread across forums and dark web archives. Viewers reported that the woman's eyes began to fill with red before the feed cut to static. Medical experts claim it's coincidence, a hereditary condition misinterpreted as curse. The church claims it's myth, distorted through fear and time. But somewhere between faith and fact lies a truth no one wants to face. What if belief itself can wound the body, and guilt can be inherited? During a restoration project at Peoria Cathedral, archivists uncovered a hidden vault marked with the Devereux family crest. Inside, they found a child's hymnal from 1857. Every page was blank, except the last one, written in faded ink. When they stop believing, I can finally rest. But beneath that line, fresh blood had seeped through the paper, forming a single, new sentence, as though written recently. They still believe. They say faith can heal, but for the Devereux bloodline, it never stopped bleeding. From 1857 to 2015, from Illinois to modern suburbs across the world, the story remains the same. A young girl weeps blood every hour, not because she's cursed, but because she was never allowed to forget. Every church that stood over her grave has fallen. Every descendant who tried to bury the truth has vanished. And yet every Easter, locals in Millfield report the same thing. A faint sound of a child singing an old hymn drifting through the night. If you follow the voice, it always leads to the same place, the empty lot where the altar once stood. And beneath that ground, the soil stays warm, because some faiths never die. They just keep bleeding. The end.